I would suggest that we start, and I welcome you to the next session. I think this morning we had already a wonderful opportunity to have actually a tour de horizon about the Japanese social development program. And I trust that you had also already a chance to visit some of the exposés of projects where you see what incredible work and initiative and energy is generated by these types of projects. While we were looking across continents, we are going to dedicate the next session to Indonesia. And towards this end, I'm welcoming our Managing Director, Mrs. Sri Mulyani Indrawati, as well as the lead persons behind one of the projects which are here also showcased. That is the Women-Headed Household Empowerment Program, which was launched by Ms. Nani Zulminarni. And one of the beneficiaries was Petronella Peni, and she will be able to share some of the experiences. I think the interviews will be conducted by my colleague Phil Hayes. But I would like to say that this is a very nice opportunity to have Sri Mulyani now on the other side with us on the bank. But as you know, she has been the finance minister for some time in Indonesia, and therefore knows particularly the Indonesian reality quite well, and also the whole bridge now with a multilateral institution. So she knows the experience from the field and now from Washington. So we very much appreciate that you took the time to join us for this session. But also I would like to welcome particularly our Indonesian friends who came from far to share their experiences. And as I said in the introductory remarks, it is often that aspect where we can have most of the learning, but also to feel your enthusiasm, your dynamism, despite sometimes obstacles, and how you persisted. This is often for us an inspiration, and that's also the reason why we are celebrating this 10th anniversary. So very much welcome to the bank. Thank you, Sri Mulyani, and let me hand over to Phil. Thank you.
Axel, thank you very much indeed for that very generous and handsome introduction to our guests and to Sri Mulyani this morning. When I came in, it was very clear to me that something very special was going on in here by way of an anniversary. Axel was my guide and walked me around some of the projects. And as one of the previous speakers had said, one of the things about the JSDF was its power to unlock potential. And that was certainly abundantly clear to me as I visited each of the country stops and the project stops. So let me just say from that perspective right out, I'm a natural convert to the JSDF as well. Yeah. Well, look, let us make the most of this wonderful gathering, both of the beneficiaries and I think the advocates for JSDF at the Indonesian country level, and make the most of having our Managing Director, Sri Mulyani Indrawati, with us, or as she's quickly become known across the bank, SMI, by her initials. It's worth spelling out that Sri Mulyani is the Managing Director for East Asia and the Pacific, the Latin America and the Caribbean region, and the Middle East. So I really did want to spell that out, Sri, if you'd bear with me. And I know this will make her blush a little, but I do insist on it. She was one of the few finance ministers, I believe, in the world today who was voted Finance Minister of the Year by the very influential Euromoney magazine 2 years running, in 2006 and 2007. So I would like to put that out there. Nani Zulminarni is CEO and National Coordinator for PEKKA. I did want to just say, Nani, that it's remarkable, your organization, that it works with 430 grassroots organizations of poor women who are heads of households in Indonesia. And as Axel said, the focus is to empower and build the collective power of those women head of households. And I know that we're all anxious to know more. And Ms. Petronella Peni is chief of the Nisa Wulan village and a PEKKA group leader. And I know someone whose life has also been improved very much by the transformative nature of the JSDF. So if you will allow me, Sri Mulyani, the first JSDF grant awarded in 2000 to the Ministry of Home Affairs in Indonesia, with the very express job of developing new methods to give voice to very poor groups. What was special about the time and the place in Indonesia that such a project and program was needed?
Well, the timing is very, very important. 2000, if you remember, Indonesia is only 2 years after we suffered the crisis, the biggest financial crisis for the country, 97, 98, and continue to 1999. The poverty level is doubling, and of course you can see that the social crisis has become one of the most severe impact of this unemployment as well as the poverty, which is increased quite dramatically because of the crisis. So the government the change of the government since then is also brought quite a very radical, what you call it, political, legal, and social structure in Indonesia. We was, before Indonesia was very centralized, authoritarian, closed government, becoming very democratized, open, and decentralized. But not, I mean, the change is very fast, very dramatic, big bang you can call it, but the competency of the local government in order to serve the people, because the decentralization is actually to make the government more closer to the people so they can serve better, they can respond faster and accurate about what is the basic need of the people. But it is not always automatically happen because of competency and capacity is not there. Not to mention that the fiscal situation is very bad because of the bailout of the banking system costs the government around 60 to 70% of GDP. So that create what you call it a very vulnerable group of people, including in this case the most vulnerable is the poor and women, is very actually suffer very much from this crisis. So that was the setting of 2000 when this JSDF came, and I think it's really like a very, very important in empowering and giving an idea for the poor people and community themselves to build what they call it social protection. And because they really empower the community, I guess that is I think it's the best in terms of timing as well as the modality, and at the same time also from the government point of view, it opens eyes in terms of the way they can actually develop their pro-poor program after that.
Sri, so that was 2000. When you look back, obviously you're here at the bank now, I'm sure your power of recall is extremely vivid. What would you say was like the one or the two things that stay in your mind that you think that grant unlocked? We were talking about unlocking potential. What do you take the most pleasure from by way of an observation about that grant?
Well, it is really based on the community's own strength. So they have their own mechanism to form as well as to divine what is the activity that's suitable for them. They actually become really an entrepreneur themselves. They can see what is actually activity that can be sustained, which is compatible with whatever capacity that they are having. But at the same time, they can then develop themselves and feel that there is a demand to increase their own capacity. So this is like a demand-driven, which is vis-a-vis if many of the government programs usually top-down, designed by the government official or bureaucrat, which is not necessarily compatible with the society itself. So it can only sustain when there is some money from the government, but it cannot really like have the ownership and the power from the society itself. So this is actually a very, very good of this program of identifying the power as well as the ownership of the people so that they have their own responsibility to improve their own economic well-being.
Sri, thanks very much indeed for that. Nani, around 2000, so in between that first and the second JSDF grant, we see the origins of PEKKA, this extraordinary organization I've had great pleasure reading about. Can you briefly describe what it is, and why it was needed. Sri's talked about the first grant and unlocking the whole potential of poor women's voice. What did you set up your remarkable institution to do?
I think it was after the crisis, it's followed also with the conflict around some part of Indonesia, which leave many widows in our country. And I think this PEKKA started when widows in Aceh, as one of the major conflict area of Indonesia, protest to the World Bank mission. They protest because the main program, the main poverty program in Indonesia, which is KDP, it's huge program, failed to reach them. They protest that they didn't get anything from that program. So they asked Scott Guggenheim at the time that, can we have our own program? And JSDF came with the project called Widows Project and asked me to coordinate the program. And I realized that the widows in our country is not only the issues of poverty, but it's much more complex on that. It's also issues of social identity and discrimination and stereotyping of widows. So that's why they are excluded in the whole system. So through this, then I asked the JSDF through the World Bank whether I can change the paradigm of the Widows Project, which only want to give money to widows, to become more empowerment process, which not only giving money for economic, but also go beyond that, try to reach more social change in how people seeing the widows, how widows seeing themselves, and also expand the definition of women-headed household, not only widows, but also divorced, single women, neglected women, and also women who has to become the head of the household because of the poverty in our country affected by the crisis.
I really like the way you describe the way of not looking at it purely as a result of poverty, not having enough money to make ends meet, not enough food on the table every night, but it was part of a broader sort of lack and gap in social standing, in esteem, self-esteem, and the esteem that's conferred on poor women. When you look back, in a way, same question I put to Sri Mulyani before, you've been going since 2000, this remarkable organization. What are some of the things that come to your mind when you look back over the last sort of 10, soon to be 11 years, that make you think we really were right to start this?
I think the invisibility of the numbers of the women-headed household. When we look at the statistical data and review, it's on every year actually it's constantly increasing numbers of women-headed household in Indonesia, but it's not recognized by the law, it's not recognized by the system, so they are not in the process of that. When we started the program, it's so difficult to go to traditional system like asking the local government and then go through the structure. But we have to reach them. We are going to the mountain, we are going to the river, we are going to different places that the development program never been there. So that's how we started with one small group, and now actually we are already reaching 550 grassroots women-headed household. So I think that's what I remember most, how we are really fighting with the stereotyping of the widows, because when we ask, we want to meet widows in Indonesia, we call it janda, that's addressed to both widows and divorce. And then people laughing, thinking that we will sell them, we will, traffic them to become prostitutes. So we were refused, we were rejected, not only by community, but also some local government really refused us. And they hate me a lot because of the process we are doing, so we're coming directly to the community, even though they don't let us to do so. So fighting all this kind of system. But now I see the change is huge change in this time after almost 10 years.
I see it in your face. You were not a woman to be blunted or to be sort of somehow deflected from this mission. Your strength is very obvious, if I can put it that way. And we're thrilled that you came all this way to give us this personal account. It's really in telling of these stories that we really see the extraordinary reach of these programs in the way it affects people's lives. So thank you. We'll be coming back to you in a minute. Petronella Peni, you're the chief of the Nisa Wulan village and the PEKKA group leader. I'm from the South Pacific. I'm from New Zealand. I know Indonesia a bit. Tell us where the Nisa Wulan village is in your country.
Bicara ke saya saja. Iya, letaknya. Oh. In the Lesser Sunda Island and the Flores Island. It's on the east part of Bali.
Oh, I see, I see. So fairly sort of a long way away from the power centers of Indonesia, where the kind of services that you were talking about would not have normally reached, I take it.
Kita akan sampai ke Flores ya biasanya. Yes.
And let me just acknowledge that on Chief Peni's left is the formidable translator, Mr. Eddie Sanjaja. So, Eddie, we're delighted to have you with us too. So, my question to you, Petronella, is when did PEKKA first come to your community, and how did you hear about it when they turned up? Had you heard a bit about them to begin with, and were you receptive to them?
Siapa yang? 2002. Lalu bagaimana perasaan ibu pada waktu itu? She was very happy and very proud of it.
And what were they offering you, and what were you hoping to, to gain from this association? They've turned up out of the blue. You've heard about them. What are your hopes and aspirations?
Harapan ibu dengan organisasi itu.
Harapan saya program ini harus berjalan terus karena.
My hope that this program will continue and it has to go. Lalu.
So here you are in your village, a long way away from Jakarta and in the power centers of Indonesia. What is it you want help with? So try to take us there and describe. So here you are in your village. You're a leader. You're the chief. You've got the vision, if you will, for the future. What is it you need and desire from PEKKA?
Organisasi itu dan banyak membantu. Apa yang ingin ibu capai?
Banyak perubahan yang terjadi di desa.
She wants some changes in her village. Lots of changes.
Like what?
Seperti apa misalnya?
What would some of the changes have been, Petronella?
Air masuk desa, listrik masuk desa, jalan.
Electricity coming into the village, clean water, streets, education.
So all the things so many of us in the better off countries of the world take for granted.
Yeah.
You were wanting these basic staples as well.
Yes.
And let me just ask you a question as well. When you look back, how much of this has been delivered? How much of this has been created?
Sudah masuk sekarang di NTT. Jadi mengenai air, mengenai itu sudah berjalan sekarang. Oh, there are some that have had some water, but there are some that have not. But she's still working on it.
So there's you've still got these goals. Things don't happen that quickly, do they?
Jadi masih ada tujuannya ya. Yeah. Yes.
We'll come back and visit with you shortly. I just think it's very important for this audience, which is used to clean waters, wonderful navigable streets, to really see in our mind the very reality that in your village, Chief Peni, is your everyday reality.
Yang sehari-hari itu tidak ada air yang bersih, tidak ada listrik. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. Sri Mulyani, let me come back to you with a question and ask whether the success of PEKKA led to broader changes in Indonesian society or government policy.
Well, certainly, the scale up is something which is really picked up by the government. As I mentioned earlier, 2000 we have the post-crisis, financial crisis, and then the new government elected in 2004 late. And then we have the food crisis and oil crisis, that is the price of the oil increased very dramatically, that make the government facing a very difficult policy option by increasing the oil price, but at the same time, you want to protect the poor. And at that time, the government choice is actually provide cash transfer regardless. So you just give for the poor family a cash money. And then on the second year, it certainly is very dramatic, but we are very successful in the sense that the price change can be delivered, improving the fiscal position, but at the same time protecting the poor. But then we see the weaknesses of this design, that the government see that if we can actually put this cash money for the poor in a much better design by empowering the community. And we don't have to reinvent that one because we have the KDP, which is Nani mentioned, has been actually criticized that not really reaching the real poor of the poor. That is something which is usually the government-owned institutional capacity to reach out for that bottom is very, very difficult. So this kind of grouping or the self-empowering group which is initiated Nani and other NGOs is very important in actually complementing what is the government intention of doing the pro-poor program, that then combined with the community-owned initiative, and that has been scaled up quite dramatically in the past 5 years. So government, in this case, when the new government came in 2004, they have a triple track strategy: pro-poor, pro-job, and what was the third one? Pro-poor, pro-job, and pro-welfare, improving the welfare of the people in general. And that has been actually put in what you call it, many of government policy. Money is become plenty for the poor, but of course it can be, ironically, cannot reach them. And that's why the community-driven is very, very important. Second one is in terms of, so scaling up is the taking into action of what is actually happened with the KDP. Second one is actually government own many pro-poor policy, for example, rice for poor family. This is also, as Nani mentioned, many of the widower or the female-headed family cannot get this kind of program because legally they are not recognized. So discrimination and so on is not there. So it's very important for the government actually to always improve in terms of identifying who's really the poorest of the poor and who is really eligible for any program, which is, this is in terms of subsidy of the rice or in terms of subsidy for the health services or education. Basic water, what mentioned by Petronella, that is the demand for clean water is also there. And that is very important to identifying where is the location, what the government-owned capacity to deliver it is very limited if we are not relying on the information on the ground. So I think the most important part after 10 years, and especially our own, at that time, government-owned program, they see the limitation of the government ability to design and to reach out to the real bottom poor, and that can be really helped by the program like PEKKA.
Sri, you were mentioning there that it had changed targeting, which of course is crucial. Imagining you're reaching the poor is not the same thing as proving it. So constant evaluation and correct targeting, obviously imperative. Did the experience with PEKKA help the government modify or temper the way it reached other marginalized groups? Nani's talked about, poor women who were head of households. So obviously huge incentive there and success in reaching them. What about other minority groups in Indonesian society? Did the PEKKA experience bring broader changes?
Oh, definitely. I think in terms of the way the government now, doing what you call it consolidated poor program. This is really based on a community development. Actually, not only in the regular poverty alleviation program that the government adopting the PEKKA type project or approach, But even on a natural disaster recovery, actually we adopting this community base. I remember when I was in Aceh in 2004 when we have this tsunami, and also after that, Indonesia also hit many by the earthquake, for example, like in Yogyakarta and Central Java, and then in West Java. We have many of the, what you call it, the village with the housing is already destroyed by the earthquake.
Right.
The tsunami type is very dramatic because the land has been swept by this tsunami, so you cannot see the border of each of the land when they are going to granting again and rebuild the housing. First, the family is gone, it's only a few left.
Right.
And how you are going to build a house and identifying which houses belong to who. This cannot be done by the one top-down approach, or even in this case, the data is also destroyed. So in order for the government to restore the livelihood, you really have to rely on this community own. So for them, it's really like restoring from this very traumatic situation. They have to be supported in order for them to be strong again and identifying how to rebuild their own house, but also on livelihood. So this is really like the approach in which we rely more and more on a community to identify the border, the design of the house, because it can be easily that the government make the decision based on the design, which is maybe also dictated by the supplier rather than the real need of the people. That can be easily like that. So this is like the design of the house that they really want, which is close to their own culture and social value. I think that's very important in giving us this kind of idea. So when we rebuild other, Java is different from Aceh.
Right.
So you always have the community from each region and provincial have their own community characteristic. Flores, in this case, like what Petronella, is totally different. Her story is actually very dramatic. If you can dig more on her story, the village is mostly, as told by Nani, mostly is headed by a woman, because man is leaving the village and they are going to Jakarta or to even Malaysia to get a job. And then they just leave the woman with whatever, pregnant woman, and without even very clear in terms of their marriage status. So what Nani and actually PEKKA did and now is continuing doing that is very, very remarkable. They gave them the legal status, they provide with the economic activity, and Petronella now can become one of the first village head, which is running. Before, the women never been recognized in their customs position, and this has become an honor for them to be recognized by their own society, but also in this case, then they can access many of the government program in tapping and scaling up their own activity.
Sri, thanks very much for that. You've certainly raised, when I was thinking about the poor social esteem of women that you were talking about, Nani, and I was thinking, here you are, Petronella, the chief of your particular village. Let me do as Sri's invited me to, and ask you how that came about.
Bagaimana caranya sehingga ibu bisa menjadi kepala daerah di situ? At the beginning it was men. Lalu? Oh, then they have problems. Always problem with men. See.
I understand that is so.
And I was involved in this organization for 1 year, and so I tried to help and solve the problem. Lalu? So I registered myself to be a candidate, and I got the votes. And here we are.
Your family must have just been full of admiration for this
so
extraordinary honor.
Yeah. She has something that she would like for you to know also. The consistency, piggybacking on what Ibu Sri just said, that the consistency of this project has to continue to identify the poor of the poor, and also to target the right person to be educated, and all of these facilities to be targeted to the right people. That's what she said.
It's remarkably, wise observation in that how else would you know if local communities are not full strategic partners in forging the kind of future they want?
Bagaimana kita bisa mengetahui siapa yang betul-betul membutuhkan keperluan-keperluan tadi. Jadi bagaimana Ibu bisa mengetahui targetnya itu harus betul orang yang akan diberi bantuan seperti tadi Ibu bilang.
I think you should ask Nani because she's the one who can identify how she can differentiate between the poorest and the poor and who's really like maybe it's just a cosmetic organization. Now,
absolutely.
You have a lot of experience.
Yeah.
Well, you have, and you're now, what, in 17 provinces in Indonesia? So help us understand, how do you make that targeting, that the poorest of the poor receive the benefit they're intended to receive from marvelous organizations and funds like the JSDF?
Yeah, there are several steps on that. First, we review our government statistical data to find number of women-headed households and also number of the poor people in one province. But then the challenge is to find the real number at the village level.
Right.
Then we go down directly. So we go and ask the village head. Usually they don't also have a clear number. They only have the one who officially divorced or the husbands die. Then we have to really go to where women come together. Then also we fail to find the real one. Then we have to go really to the paddy field, to the mountain,
right.
to the places that the women-headed house, the poorest women-headed household that spend most of their time. That's why they never involved in the social organization like pengajian, is the religious groups there, or other village community, because they spend most of their time working or earning for right. the children.
Right.
And we can also see from the house. So if you go to the village in Indonesia, most of the province, we work from eastern part to western part. You see the most poor house, this must be women-headed household. But sometimes also they live with the parents' house with so many women-headed household in one house. We experience a lot in Aceh, for example. One house belonged to occupied by 5 women-headed household, like mother, and then their daughters also become right. women-headed households. So that's the way we work. So we really go deeper and go spend time in the village, move around that, and also we mobilize then the PEKKA leaders to also go. They are reaching their peer, so they know who are their friends. Yeah.
So you can't expect poor people to be at home waiting for the household survey team
Not
to
for
turn
the
up.
women, no.
So you go to where the women are working yeah. or selling vegetables in the market.
Yes.
Absolutely right. I mentioned before that you've expanded to 17 provinces now, no small feat. Have there been growing pains? Have you run across problems as you've taken what's obviously a promising approach and you've expanded it?
Yeah, the most challenging is to find, to expand my team. Every time I meet Yolene here, she is asking me, so do you find another Nani? So it's so difficult to find more friends who want to work through this very painful process. And also, I think we spend most of our time in the village, and also traveling to most remote area, reaching and spend time there, and spend most of our energy and resources to train these women, because most of these women are illiterate. 60% of women-headed households that we are working with right. are illiterate. So to train them takes more time than training NGOs activists, for example. So that's the most challenging, to expand my team so we can reach more areas.
Let me ask you, Sri Mulyani, thanks for that, Nani. When you look at the remarkable way that these women have expanded the reach and made the PEKKA program deliver real results at village and province level. Are there lessons in that for the way that we in the bank interact with civil society organizations and communities around the world? Are there portable lessons from rural Indonesia to here?
Well, definitely. I think this is also, bank recognize that the potential and especially reaching out to the poor is very, very important. The operation of the bank in the past is always rely on the government, and if you see the government institutional capacity reaching out to the people, and not to mention the vulnerability from the corruption and so on, or if it is not corruption, inefficient, if you can call it in a euphemistic and soft way. But still, you have this concern that the money that is supposed to be for the poor can be easily shifted into other administrative, or even in this case still by the corrupter. So for the bank, really like having the design that really reaching the poor is very important. This kind of activity by PEKKA or community-based activity is very, very important. I think we learned this in many of the conditional cash transfer, which is the bank also supported in many different countries. I visited in Mexico. We also visited in Manila area in Philippines. They are all based on this community. I think it's very important to really cut all the bureaucracy, eliminating the potential of corruption, really reaching the money as well as the program to the poor. And the poor themselves can actually organize and have their own power, which is unleashed because of this program, and they then become the real economic unit or agent that can really taking care of themselves, but also improving the welfare of the country. So for the bank, this is the type of the program which is adopted. It is now become the modality which is exchanged by many of the poor country. IDA country now also looking at this type of activity which is based on community.
Sri, thanks very much. Nani, let's jump forward 10 years. Let's get in our time capsule and hurtle through the atmosphere, go forward 10 years. What do you hope PEKKA is going to look like at the end of the next 10 years? Because I think you're obviously a speeding train. No one's going to stop you.
We are moving toward to this become a movement, not only a development project, but more movement. And I want to see our center. We now have 88 community-based centers that are running by the women-headed household in the village level and sub-district level. I want to see this center is growing in all over Indonesia and become learning center for community, not only PEKKA and PEKKA families, but also other poor community, which is now is already in the process, but I want to see it more. And I want to see more Petronella Peni. I want to see more women-headed households become village head in the remote poor village, so they can really build the village become. I think Petronella Peni's village can become like a model, because she's really implement what Ibu Sri Mulyani tried to do, make the government more accountable, be transparent, and maximize the government money for development to benefit the poorest. So I think I'll see that in the next 10 years, we will at least have 20 more women-headed households become village head, and we have like maybe 100 centers, PEKKA centers in community who become learning and resource center for other poor. And I want to see government pick up PEKKA become a reference for their empowerment program. I think now they start with piloting to try to reach the other marginalized poorest people using our model also with the PNPM Peduli, they call it PNPM Care Program. So that's what I want to see in the next 10 years.
I have every reason to think it's going to happen as well, based on what we've heard here this morning, Nani. So let me turn to Petronella Peni. We've asked Nani what PEKKA will look like in 10 years. What do you hope your village will look like in 10 years?
10 tahun mendatang desa Ibu kelihatannya seperti apa? I'm anticipating your question. I asked that question earlier, and she said exactly the same. More women leader and erase all the stigma about widower.
Because as Nani was saying, one of her ideas of success would be that, you know, your remarkable success in your village is in neighboring villages, becomes normal, routine.
Jadi bagaimana menurut Ibu 10 tahun yang akan datang? Keadaan desa Ibu bagaimana? It has to change and independent.
When you go back to your village, it's going to be a long distance, I imagine. What are you going to tell your village council and the people you encounter? They're going to say, well, we know you went on the plane across the Pacific, you went to Washington. What happened there? What's the conclusion you're going to take back when you go, you know what, the most amazing thing happened?
Apa yang Ibu akan beritakan kepada mereka? Iya. You have to be diligent, working so that there will be a big change in this village right now.
Please also convey to the members of your village and your council just our total admiration for what you have achieved in your life and the remarkable transformation which you're doing on behalf of your villages.
Yes, we will.
Why don't we give Petronella a big round of applause?
I think one thing that she will really tell her people in the village that she met Ibu Sri Mulyani here because we never met Ibu Sri Mulyani in Indonesia, and she told her yesterday when we met that I saw you on television and it's like a dream to see her here sitting in the World Bank, and while she's coming from very remote area village, so it's like connecting the voice to become her voice become more global. So.
Nani, thanks very much indeed. Have I got time for one more question to Sri Mulyani? Sri, how can communities and programs like the JSDF contribute to the war on poverty, reducing poverty, based on these remarkable lessons and this testimony we've had from rural Indonesia? Just a quick thought.
Well, we should recognize that even poor people, they have power, they have dignity, they have motivation, not to alleviate themselves from poverty. So we should not look at the poor people that they are really in a position that they are asking for only help. So really the sense for us here in the World Bank and for the government all over the world who really try to alleviate poverty, you really have to recognize this power, because you are not helping them, they themselves helping themselves. It is the job of the government or the World Bank to be able to design the right program so that that power can be actualized. And by providing the good environment, it's not burdening them with the bureaucracy or all this discrimination. And I think this is going to be a very, very good for any government to adopt, and having this view of looking at the poor people as having their own power to alleviate from poverty.
Sri Mulyani. Well, ladies and gentlemen, special guests, thanks so much for joining us for our conversation. Many thanks to Sri Mulyani, to Nani, Petronella, and interpreter Eddie, who was able to bring alive this very vivid and inspiring story, frankly, from your village, Petronella. So, having thanked my guests and thanked you, ladies and gentlemen, back to our wonderful moderator.